Wizard Ranch is probably in the most need of ecological restoration of our entire portfolio of nature preserves at this time.
That really is thick in there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the restoration site here it's just severely degraded forest with invasive plant communities that are just choking out any attempt by the native vegetation.
Non-native plant species have not had the history to co-evolve with all other native species within our region. They may provide some habitat value, but it's minimal in comparison to what our native species provide.
No oak or anything like that?
No oak until you get way up to the top, and then you're scattered to probably less than 1 per acre.
Yeah.
And so really, there's no ability for natural ecological succession to happen here without some sort of disturbance regime being introduced, and that's really what we're trying to do with the restoration here.
Right. Controlled burns were a part of this disturbance regime here for 10,000 years. They ended essentially with European settlement.
The first step in the process here was to remove the undesirable vegetation, which was a lot of ailanthus, privet, mile-minute, Japanese honeysuckle. That was accomplished by a forestry mowing. One of the byproducts of the forestry mowing is the slash that you see on the hillside over there. So the first step in a prescribed burn is to establish your fuel bed. You then need to monitor your fuel bed to make sure that the moisture content is sufficient, to make sure that we time our burn just right so the weather conditions match up with the fuel moisture content so that we get the desirable effects of the burn, which would be to not just remove the residual slash, but also to burn some of the residual seed bed from the invasive species that still reside in the soil.
I mean, this is the threat of the invasive species. They decrease biodiversity, and one of the reasons why we as a conservancy protect land is to protect biodiversity. We're losing species at a frightening pace, even here in York County. By protecting this land, we protect biodiversity, but then the second piece of that is by restoring that land, by removing those invasive species and managing it intentionally to increase biodiversity, we're protecting the habitats that all these different species need.
Today also represents a milestone for the Conservancy in that this will be the very first prescribed burn in the 50+ years the Conservancy has been established, as well as the first burn in this part of York County. So we are returning a previous management tool that has been absent from the landscape for centuries today.
But after that disturbance, now we have to make sure that we're taking care of that land. So this place will be very, very different in a year.
Up top, the ailanthus was so thick that when we mowed it, I had no idea that we were going to open up that view shed. I did not know it was available to us. But you can actually see past the old Accomack site, east along the river.
The area behind me will be planted in native trees and shrubs, with a lot of native grasses in between, so a savanna-like ecosystem. The meadow between here and that burn unit behind me will be converted to warm season grasses. Right now it's cool season hay meadow, which is not native. Warm season grasses with pollinator forbs, which is incredible habitat for grassland nesting birds, which are in serious decline, things like meadow larks and grasshopper sparrows. Coming in 2024, we will begin a wetland restoration and establishment along with a stream bank reestablishment. Years of past management have yielded a braided stream channel that really is not sufficient to handle the water flows that have started to occur on a more regular basis around here as the climate shifts. There was really no place for the water to be diverted and to pull some power away. And so you had heavy sedimentation and erosion into the creek, which eventually feeds into the Susquehanna. But really, where we're going to see the most benefit from that is the reestablishment of a desirable vegetated buffer to filter out the sediment before it reaches the stream channel. This land has a tradition of engaging kids in outdoor education, outdoor recreation. And that tradition is going to continue with the Conservancy managing this property. It's going to take a little bit of a different nuance because now we're going to focus on ecological restoration work with students and with the entire community.